I think this is the ninth or 10th episode in the SPC Journey series, and I've got a long list of ones coming up next. So very excited. Give people just a few minutes to arrive, or maybe not quite a few, just a couple minutes to arrive. Welcome everybody as you're joining. If you don't mind, throw into chat, which is enabled this time. Throw into chat where you're coming in from. You know, different parts of the world, different parts of the country, different parts of the countries. I'm McKinney, Texas here.
Wow, we got Norway.
Excellent. Switzerland, Arkansas, Michigan. Nice.
Friends in
India.
Quebec.
Some Virginia. That's one thing I love about the SAFE community is it's global. And this time slot actually works fairly well because it's the evening for many people over in Europe. I just got back from Prague. It was pretty awesome. First time over there, and I really enjoyed it. See, Toronto, Connecticut, Germany, Plano, Massachusetts, lots and lots of places here. So today's episode is all about SPCs who have chosen to become RTEs. I'll tell you that when I'm interviewing SPCs, when we have space on our team to add somebody, truly serving as an RTE long-term is something that really adds to your ability to coach and launch agile release trains. You know, as somebody who I've only experienced 1 month as an RTE myself, which I think is actually more than some SPCs. The individuals on this call are at different points of their journey. And I'll go ahead and just get started with some introductions. So this series is really about connecting you, the audience, with the awesome SPCs that are in a variety of roles around the globe. Once you become an SPC, there's so many different ways you can take your career. You know, for me, I like to specialize in lean portfolio management and the business side of things, agile product management, mentoring SPCs. Other people, they have other passions, TDD and BDD and DevOps and governance and the technical side of things, leading teams, leading trains, leading solution trains. With me today, I've got 3 people with me that I've met on my journey. First one is Michael Robertson. He's an SPCT candidate. He works here at Applied Frameworks with me. I met Mike when he was a brand new wet behind the ears RTE for the first government agile release train that I had part of launching. And Mike was an RTE there for several years. So he's probably the most experienced RTE on the call here. Then we've got Matt Davis. Matt Davis has been an RTE for several PIs, 4, 5, 6. And he's also an SPC. I think he's been an SPC longer than he's been an RTE. And then we've got Sally McDonald. She's newer on her journey, but she's making waves already. And I think you're in your second PI now. So Sally, you want to introduce yourself a little bit more?
Yeah. Hey, I'm Sally McDonald. I work at Arkansas Blue Cross and Blue Shield, and I'm serving as the release train engineer for the first ART at our enterprise. I'm also an SPC, got that, about 6 weeks ago, and I'm helping our organization scale SAFE across the enterprise. So happy to be here.
We're very happy to have you. And Matt.
Sure. Matt Davis. I'm a RTE for Salesforce in Support Reimagined, which is the customer support section of Salesforce. My background is mainly in engineering and engineering management, but I got my SPC a couple years ago and wanted to hop into the RTE space, and here I am.
Awesome. And then Mr. Robertson.
Hey folks, Michael Robertson. I am an SPCT candidate, just newly started that journey. I'm also a principal consultant with Applied Frameworks, and I work with a variety of engagements. RTE is my passion, among other things. As Phil mentioned, I cut my teeth in the government space on an ART there. It was a lot of fun, very enlightening and very fulfilling. And I guess that's enough for me.
Great. And today we're going to have a series of conversations kind of about, the role of the RTE, how that evolves over time. We'll talk about the relationship of the RTE and the business owners and stakeholders, how the RTE leads by example, We'll talk about ways to grow the RT's reach through partnerships with both stakeholders, scrum masters, and team coaches. We'll talk about what do you do when you're the only one in the room who sees trouble coming? And then finally, some tips and tricks from each of the three of these awesome RTs we've got today. We also have time for questions. There is a Q&A area, so if you have a question as we go, feel free to throw it into the Q&A section. Please don't use chat because I won't see that. Ramya, thank you very much for the congratulations. Yes, I'm a new SAFE fellow. It hasn't quite sunk in yet, but thank you for saying that. All right, so let's just start off with the role of the RTE. Right, when I remember telling Mike, "You're gonna get bored," and he laughed in my face. He could not see. This was during the end of his first PI, his first INA, and he just could not see possibility of getting bored as an RTE. Mike, can you tell me a little bit more about kind of how that role of RTE evolved over the years you were serving Joe in the Army and Air Force train?
So Phil and I, Phil's been along with my journey since the very beginning with this, and we've had lots of discussions, and the focus was really about empowering the team so that we could, make them better, help them be higher functioning teams. And also with the idea that, the more dependent they were on me, the less effective they were going to be. It was more about empowering them. And that was my focus, training them, helping them understand. And I guess I did a pretty good job because eventually there was a lot less requirement for me to get in and help them explain things to them or help them uncover issues or deal with them. They became much more self-sufficient. And that's really over a little over 2 years. That's kind of how my journey evolved. And the whole organization really became much more fluid. The flow was incredible. The communication was great. The alignment was awesome. And I felt proud about that, but it kind of, it was time for me to move on to something else because I had accomplished that. So.
How about you, Matt? Did you find, how has your role evolved over time? Have you been there, 4 or 5 PIs? You've seen the train. I think you inherited the train, right? It was already there. You were replacing an existing RTE. Tell us a little bit about your journey and how the role evolved.
Sure. So, just kind of coming in, you got to get the lay of the land. You're finding out where the gaps are inside the train, who understands what are the best practices that are being followed, where can we make improvements, those sorts of things. And then as you do the first couple of PIs, you kind of get a handle on those items, and then you can move forward, start to tweak instead of doing wholesale changes of various things. So I'd say that's how it's really changed for me is it's gone from being a less of an instructor and more of a coach and more of reinforcing good behaviors rather than introducing them wholesale new.
Great point. How about you, Sally? Where are you on that journey?
Yeah, so I'm still pretty early. We are about halfway through PI2, but I can still tell the difference from PI1 to PI2, even though it's really not that long of amount of time that they have been practicing SAFE. We were just doing another value stream in our identification workshop just last week, and our CIO got up in front of everybody using our first art. We call it the core art. He got up there and he said the difference between PI1 and PI2 is night and day. PI1, everybody's trying to figure out, what are we doing? What is all these, all the new terms, all the new language, especially with the business side. And in PI2, people are much more familiar and have clear expectations of kind of how things are going to work. So, I've only been doing it a couple weeks, couple months, but you can tell a huge difference just from one PI to the next.
You mentioned, you mentioned value stream identification workshop. So, I want to touch on this briefly. How have you leveraged your SPC? Did you get to facilitate? Were you actually working and doing facilitating a breakout during the value stream workshop, or were you in a different role? Were you able to leverage your SPC, and did that help?
Yes. So, I mentioned that SAFE is pretty new to our organization. We had our first value stream and art identification workshop back in November of 2022. We have an individual at Blue Cross that is kind of leading the charge for us, Angie Smith, and she was our first SPC. And then we also have Applied Frameworks on helping us scale this. And then I became an SPC. So we actually had 2 value stream identification workshops last week, and Angie and I were both able to facilitate the breakout sessions as SPCs alongside Applied Frameworks. So
That's awesome.
yeah,
How about-
it was great to be able to, you know, kind of learn from Applied Frameworks and help to apply that in our organization. So it was really nice.
Next time you can do it on your own. So it's
Yeah.
awesome. How about you, Matt? How have you leveraged your SPC as an RTE?
Well, I'd say that just taking the course filled in so many gaps for me. I'd seen it done. I'd worked with RTs throughout pretty much the entirety of my career, but until you actually sit down and take the course and go through the coursework, it really opened up a lot of doors for me, and really a lot of light bulbs came on during that course. And then the backup materials for it are essential. I've used them a million times over the past couple of years. Saying, well, what do you mean when you say, you know, a value stream, or what is exactly the role of the RTE? It's really easy to answer those questions in a kind of a unified manner by utilizing those backup sources and providing them, then say, look, this is the kind of how everything's supposed to work. Here's the big picture. Here's some backup slides to help explain this a little bit more. So it's really nice to have those to be able to lean on and help others elevate their understanding as well.
I'm going to skip. Thanks, Matt. I'm going to skip you, Mike, because I know you're an SPCT candidate now, so you haven't been in the RTE saddle for long. But I do want to pull this thread. I remember, you know, one of the things that you heard Sally say, you know, at this value stream workshop, her CIO got up in front, right? That's something that you don't hear every day, right? And what I found in my journey is that if you take a kind of a whole solution perspective to SAFE, where you're not just thinking it's for business or it's for IT, it's kind of together in the enterprise. And part of that, the RTE can enable. You know, Mike, you were on a government program, and in the government, I don't know if any of you are out there in the U.S. federal government, this may resonate with you, but the program manager, the person who works for that big defense contractor, they're the only one that gets to talk to the business leader on the government side, right? They're very protective of who gets to talk to the government person. And Mike really kind of took that up by building a relationship with the government executive, this guy, Joe. He was a GS-15 government executive. Mike, tell us a little bit about that relationship between the RT and the business owner and how that served your art.
Well, for those of you who have been RTEs or have seen RTEs in action, or an art in action, how closely the business is connected to your ability to get things done and make prioritization decisions is critical. And so we quickly developed a relationship. Joe and I spent a lot of one-on-one time to get to know each other and build that trust. And I explicitly said to him, Joe, I want to be very transparent with you, because I don't want us to have these walls between us. I want to be able to talk to you and help you understand what's going on so that we can leverage your help and stay in alignment. So it was something that the two of us really prioritized in the very beginning, and it paid off huge dividends. Like it shocked people how much the government business owner was aligned and involved in the art. But it was a fantastic example that Phil took advantage of, and we actually shared with many other government organizations. So Joe was fantastic and came to the table, and really all I had to do was ask. And it was interesting to see how much engagement we got out of him when we opened the door and welcomed him in. It was fantastic. It paid off huge dividends.
Remember the transparency. You know, that was the thing, is that people are afraid to flip over the rock of IT sometimes to the business. But what I've always found is when you do, there's a sigh of relief and your relationship gets stronger. Matt or Sally, do you have anything you want to share regarding your business owners? Then we'll take a question from the audience. Do you have your business owner engaged?
Yeah, I'm happy to share with our business owners. So our first PI, we're standing up. We identified one key business owner, and he was SVP of our internal operations area. And he jumped in. He has been awesome. he attends PI planning both days, the whole day. He is in the breakout rooms with the teams, helping them prioritize, understand maybe where they have blockers or impediments that he could help remove. So, I mean, he really kind of set the bar high for us, but as we've grown, we've identified additional business owners that we needed to get plugged in, and some of them haven't leaned in as well as our initial one. So the way that I'm going to approach that is actually have a meeting scheduled next week with all of our business owners to set expectations and help them understand their role and what they can really provide to these teams and to the organization, because as long as they're setting those priorities and these teams commit, we're going to be able to accomplish what they want to. So that's kind of how I'm going to address some of the business owners that aren't as engaged as others.
Awesome. Matt, I see you're shaking your head. You resonate with some of the stuff for you.
Yeah, I completely agree with Sally. I think the business owners are your first call as an RTE. So it's not the teams, it's not your scrum master or anything like that. It's definitely get alignment with the business owners. What can I do for you? How do I get your requirements in here for us to make great software? I think that's the #1 partnership for an RTE for sure.
Awesome. We have a question from chat. Who did you invite on the value stream identification workshop? C-level was there? ? So tell me about how you're, when you looked at doing this new value stream workshop, because you had your first one, you launched your first art, now you're scaling beyond that first agile release train into different value streams. How did you decide who to invite, and who from your senior exec team was invited?
So we really engaged the leaders of kind of the development area that we're looking to scale safe into, try to ask them questions that might kind of identify who their future business owners might be, who their stakeholders are. We did have our CIO there. He's really helping lead this charge through our organization, but we had several SVPs that also attended, all the way to individual contributors on future agile teams, mid-level management. So we tried to have a wide range, a wide audience at the value stream and our identification workshops. And one of the SPCs at our organization actually started off the meeting by telling them, we're leaving our titles at the door, and we're all here to work together to try to identify, what's the value that we're delivering, and what are these future arcs going to look like. So we had a wide range of players there.
Yeah, and that makes such a huge difference in the acceleration of your journey when you have that support from your C-suite, and not just support in the form of paying the bills for the certifications, but actual engagement when they're there. And I love what you said there about you had people from your CIO down to the independent contributors, that broad range of perspectives. And just as tip here from the new safe fellow on the block, is that when you do a value stream identification workshop, the more perspectives you get, the better picture you get of how value flows, and it'll pay off in dividends as you go. Matt, I know that you've had the president of Salesforce's Success organization at your PI planning events, doing kicking off and sharing their journey. Anything you would share regarding kind of the power of having those senior execs talking and there with your teams?
Yeah, absolutely. I think the key is when they come in, don't try and treat them as special as everyone seems to think that they're going to be. It's, when they come, they don't want to attend as the president of such and such. They want to attend as a participant. So, don't, my advice would be, don't overly emphasize the fact of what their title is. Just bring them in, treat them like a team member, give them things to do, treat them just like everybody else, and watch them thrive with the teams and help guide it.
Yeah. Mike, anything to close that one out with?
No, just the same, create an environment where everyone's comfortable solving this problem, like with, group or collective ownership. Everybody's owns this problem. How are we going to resolve it together as a team? That's really something that we try to drive home to facilitate that communication amongst everybody.
And that leadership that those business owners can provide, and those senior execs, it can really accelerate trust building on both sides of the fence. Mike, I remember your business owner, Joe, there was a lot of nervousness about people talking to him directly. And I remember he came in on the second day of PI planning and actually started calling people out. And I remember he asked me, he said, "Phil, do you mind if I say a few words?" And I'm like, "Uh-oh, yeah, sure, go ahead. You're the boss." And he proceeded to share some stuff. You want to tell a little bit about that? Because that was a very fond memory for me and very powerful when you talk about the business owner and the role they can have on really getting your art going.
Well, I'll give you a little background first. So the environment in a government program between contractors and government employees sometimes is contentious, right? And a little bit of friction there. And we had some of that. And we also had some friction amongst the contractors who were competing for the work, but were expected to work all together. So there was a lot of friction amongst the whole group. And what really set the tone was, as Phil mentioned, Joe came in the first day and he said, "I want us to be transparent. I want you folks to tell me what's wrong so that we can fix it." And later on that day, folks started to be transparent and they brought up some very important items that needed to be addressed, but were hard to talk about. And the next day he came with little croissants and kind of shared them with people and rewarded folks for being transparent. And the look on program managers' faces and folks like that, it was like total shock. Like, we're actually going to be able to function like this. And that really, for the most part, was Joe laying down and leading by example that this is how we're going to work going forward. So it was awesome. I still get goosebumps thinking about it.
Yeah, and it was just in the government sector, it was just unprecedented. And this is back when the government was first cutting its teeth on Agile, on SAFe back in 2018, 2019. How about, do you have any thoughts? As an RTE, right? There's lots of responsibilities you have. One of those is to exemplify lean Agile leadership. Do you have any insights on kind of how, as an RTE, you lead by example?
I have something, Bill, that I can share. Like you mentioned, as an RTE, you're leading by example. And one way that I found that I'm able to do that is in any of our art events, whether it's PI planning or a coach think or PO think, the way that they may see me facilitate a meeting or address a problem or conflict, that kind of helps them understand how they could do that at the team level. So I try to use any of my art level events to demonstrate that lean Agile leadership to help them understand and bring that back to the teams.
Matt, Mike?
Sure. So I'd say never undermine yourself.
Okay, tell me about that.
So if you're going to hold people to an expectation, you have to live that expectation yourself. So that means not doing things like shortcutting your own process. Because there'll be a strong temptation at times for a business owner to come to you and say, "Look, can you guys sneak this in? Or can you do this, that, or the other?" And you'd be like, "Oh yeah, I'm the RTE. I can probably get this into a team." And you have to resist the temptation to be able to, be that person who can kind of get things done. Say, "No, this needs to come through the process. We need to do prioritization. We need to figure out what goes in and what comes out, and we need to engage the team on how to do this." So I think that's the main thing is living the example.
Yeah, and you're right. That's tough, right? The RT role is one that has a lot of exposure, right? You're talking to some senior leaders sometimes, and I can't speak for everybody, but I know on my journey there was a time when my title mattered more than anything, and who I got to speak to. Wow, I'm talking to a senior exec, right? And I think that you said something earlier, Matt, that's very powerful, which is they're just people. Treat them the same as everyone else. And that allows the relationship to not be weird. Mike, anything you'd add?
Just that sometimes the RTE role, there's a lot of responsibility, but not the authority that you would typically get with a role or a title that has people reporting directly to them. And so the only real authority you get is what you earn from the team. Going along with what Sally and Matt were saying about leading by example and exemplifying, right? if you walk the walk, you'll get their respect. And it takes time to establish that. And you'll find that sometimes you may be the only person standing up in the room to say, hey, wait a minute, I think we might be headed in the wrong direction. And that's hard to do when you're in front of 100 people who might be your peers and some executives and business folks. So it takes a lot of courage to do that, but it's important to kind of be that last stand, you know, to set that bar for the art.
You know, you said something about, you know, that one person standing up, right? So, you know, I've seen RTEs that I've met in my journey that the world's on their shoulders, right? And, you know, it's like, they're like, how do I go to every team event? We have 15 teams on the art. We have a really big art. How do I go to all these events? My answer is, well, why would you, right? But you have to kind of, you know, grow that reach. Does anybody have any insights as to how you're able to stay in touch with everything happening on the art, both from the team delivery perspective to the strategy and vision on the product side? How do you keep your hand on that pulse? What are some of the things you've done to kind of grow your reach? Anybody have any thoughts on that?
Yeah, I can go, Phil. I mean, I have a weekly one-on-one with our product manager. So I try to stay, you know, in sync with her. I also set up just random one-on-ones with anybody on the art. It could be a team coach, could be a product owner, it could be a developer or an analyst. So just trying to stay engaged with them, understand their perspective, how things are going for them and their team. And then, you know, I do try to drop in to plannings and, you know, reviews throughout the PI, you know, trying to rotate to the different teams. But I think I can really stay engaged with them through those one-on-ones, even if it's 15 minutes. And I do, you know, 2 or 3 people a week. Just that helps build the trust with them and help them know that I care and that I'm interested and I want this to be successful for them.
But that's a great technique, and I can definitely see how that would build trust. And because there's things people will tell you one-on-one that they won't tell you in front of a group. So yeah. Awesome technique. Any other ones?
I just add that, you know, use your Scrum Masters. Definitely reach out to them. Make sure you build strong relationships with them because they're the ones who are going to be with those teams on a day-to-day basis and know what's going on. I strongly emphasize building those partnerships with your business, and then also use the meetings that you have. Scrums, ArcSync. Those are extremely important meetings, and make sure you're getting the most out of them you can.
Any tips you have on that note, Matt, to get the most out of those?
Having an agenda, people knowing what's expected of them when they show up, and then making sure that you're getting the right people in it. So it doesn't really help you a whole lot in your ArcSync if it's just your train in it. You need those business partners to come and give their perspective and say, what's your perception on how things are going, right? I mean, I can hear from my PMs all day, but what are your thoughts? What are you seeing? Asking those questions.
Excellent. Mr. Robertson, anything you want to add?
Well, I think they stole all my good ideas. So mostly you know, both Sally and Matt touched on the idea of building relationships, right? Empowering those Scrum Masters, helping them understand their role and how important they are to the art, not just to the team. That's key. And helping folks understand that you're creating an environment where you really are encouraging transparency so that escalation happens quickly, and not, you know, 3 days after it should have. So there's a lot of work that goes into setting that environment up, but when you do, then things start to really fire well. So I guess that would be my thoughts on it.
Cool. So by the way, you know, if you have questions, feel free to throw them into the Q&A. We've you know, this session's really about you know, shining the light on what it's like to serve as an RTE. You know, with that extra oomph that you've got from understanding the bigger picture of SAFe that comes from becoming an SPC. Let's talk a little bit about trouble, right? So while we've talked about all the good scenarios here, right? There are challenges you encounter. Maybe each of you could share, a challenge you've encountered on your journey when it comes to the role of the RTE and how you overcame it. Mike, you want to start?
Sure, I'll get us started. So there's generally always someone or someone's on the art who are late adopters to the framework, to the transformation. And a lot of times they get a bad rap for presenting resistance or contrary thoughts or a lot of probing questions. I like to think of it as an opportunity to really gain their trust and to help them understand that with a little more patience, to help them understand why this is going to help them and be so effective. So that is huge. And the main thing is, again, give them some patience and let them kind of work through at their own pace, because those folks tend to be your biggest advocates when you win them over, and you eventually will. And they tend to be the kind of people that will go to the mat for you because you gave them that little extra room to be comfortable in that time and space. So that's, I guess, what I would contribute to that one.
Okay, let's go with the other two of you, and then we'll get to a couple questions.
I'll go.
Ellie?
So one of the challenges that I've faced as an RTE is we kept having the same problem of a reoccurring handoff that was delaying our ability to get our work done. And it was a group of folks that weren't on the art, and it kept causing trouble for us, not meeting either iteration goals or PI objectives. So the way we addressed that was meeting with the leadership of this team that's not currently on the art to figure out how we could engage them and plan alongside them to be able to meet these goals for the business. So even if they weren't able to come onto the art, how we can bring them into PI planning or iteration plannings for the necessary teams to keep us moving along and work flowing. So just trying to get that alignment with folks even outside of the art to keep us moving.
Awesome. And that's what you might find. Sometimes they're shared services, sometimes they're part of the art. Great example. Mr. Davis.
Sure. And I have to say, Mike kind of stole what I was going to.
Well, give us your spin. Give us your spin on it.
But yeah, it's really about evangelizing amongst the group and showing them, demonstrating that by following these processes, by having these principles, you are going to get what you want, right? At the end of the day, we are going to create great software, which is what you want, what I want. We're going to get where we want to go. And he's right, 100% right. Those people do typically end up being your best advocates. Most of the business kind of sometimes starts out that way because like, well, I'm getting what I want right now, just in a really unhealthy way, right? So that's the untying of the knot that you have to get in here and achieve. But yeah, I mean, the simple point of the matter is we're going to get you what you want. We're going to do it in a healthy manner, and we're going to progress together as a team. And getting that buy-in from the business again is something I harp on constantly. Is a key to the whole endeavor.
Awesome. Well, I'm going to take a couple of questions from the Q&A here. First one from Ramya. As an RTE, if you see areas of improvement, you feel that the value stream mapping is not appropriate. That's something that you see happen sometimes. You launch an art without organizing around value. How do you approach that? What would you do? Have you, Mike, have you been in a situation where you've been involved in an art where they weren't organized around value? How did you broach that topic?
Well, the easiest way is to let them broach it, right? The kind of a retro, hey, what's not working well for you guys right now? And they will uncover it for you. And to say, well, if we organized around value, we may be able, help them understand what organizing around value actually is, because they probably don't know, and how that could help their dependencies and their flow. And then it's an easy sell, because now they see, well, we've got to make a change here in order to be able to understand how value flows. What's our structure supposed to look like so that we can improve our flow and minimize our dependencies? So it's one of those scenarios where I prefer to let them discover it for themselves, so that they can actually identify with it and own it. And then it's their change, not as a consultant, me prescribing something for them. So
Yeah, I heard Sally talk about they felt it, right? I know you've talked to me about it. I know you saw it first, right, when the art was formed, but it meant something different when they felt it. They saw missed commitments due to it. Sally, Mike, Matt, anything to add to that? Seen that on
Yeah,
your...
you know, we kicked off our first art pretty quickly, and we went through our first PI, and we realized that there were some groups of folks that weren't on the art that needed to be. And the way we addressed that was bringing it to our LACE, our Lean Agile Center of Excellence, and just having a conversation around, does it make sense to bring these groups on? What does that mean for the art, the size of the art, and just trying to have an open conversation around the benefits of bringing them on and the cons. So that's how we've addressed it.
Transparency, that's one of your best friends as an RTE. And I think, Matt said it earlier, you want to get that alignment, get that relationship with the business up front, and you'll experience SAFE much differently there. I've got one, just a reminder, please, if you can, put the questions into Q&A. I do have one in chat I saw here from Estrella. So as an SPC and RTE, how can we convince or get business or the team that plays the role of LACE to keep doing SAFE? Currently, my company's trying to implement their own flavor of Agile and looking at other gardens. Instead of looking at the root causes of why we're not delivering in certain time, what's a good time to deliver? So, I'll tell you that you may read some stuff out there about SAFE's not wonderful. Mike and I did a presentation a few years ago for a government conference where there was a guy in the government who said, avoid rigid and prescriptive frameworks like SAFE. And I remember when I showed this memo to Mike's customer, he literally laughed out loud because his experience with SAFE was completely different. And so along those lines, understand that the easiest place to blame is on the framework or on the methodology, right? And I've got experience with Scrum at Scale, with Spotify-ish, with homegrown stuff, with SAFE, with Nexus, and the stuff that makes it work is the same. The stuff that makes it not work is the same. And so, if you're in a situation where your LACE has authority, it can be really tough. I'll tell you my own journey. I went to SAFE specifically to circumvent the Agile COE at AT&T because they were the Agile police, and they heard the word Agile, they would descend like locusts, and they had their clipboards, literal clipboards, and they would grade you on how good you were at AT&T Agile. And if you went outside their lines that were very prescriptive, they would shut you down. Now, I was lucky enough to be part of a greenfield new business inside the company, and we were able to circumvent them. And I used SAFE as a way to not do what the COE was doing. Now, having said that, part of my own journey was mending fences with that LACE, because the reality is the company has trusted them with leading the transformation. And as Agilists, we all have different opinions. I was speaking to somebody yesterday at a gathering, and she's frustrated with her corporate LACE because she's had experience that quite frankly may run circles around what they've had experience with. And so whatever you can do to partner with those individuals, because what I found is that most people mean well. Sometimes they just don't have connections to the same learnings that you have. And so try and find that common ground would be the best advice I could give you as far as, what do you do with a LACE there? And at the end of the day, SAFE's really convenient because it's got materials, it's got a common lexicon, but people have had a bad experience with it sometimes. And, try and dig into why they aren't interested in the framework. And oftentimes, you'll find that they had somebody that wasn't quite ready to implement it, who wasn't willing to say, hey, you know what, I don't know what I'm doing, but I'm going to try anyway. And it didn't turn out the way you thought. But at the same time, there's individuals out there that, I remember seeing this website that was bashing SAFE. And when I dug into who created this, it was a scrum.org CST. Well, their business is as SAFE gets a larger market share, they're kind of they're getting less. And so there's other motivations there to try to understand and empathize with them. Mike, Matt, Sally, anything to add to that one?
Just that, you know, where you start with the LACE oftentimes really sets the tone. Are those folks really have a growth mindset? Have they spent the time getting some training to understand what this means? Are they people in the right position? Do they have the right personality for this? That can really set the tone. Afterwards, once you've got the LACE set up, it's really about communication and helping them keeping them plugged in on what's working at the art level and what's not. So I sympathize with that problem. That's one you're going to have to chip away at a little bit of it at a time, but I would focus on helping them understand the mindset a little deeper and demonstrating to them what's working and what's not at the art level so that they can feel a little bit more connected.
And ideally, your LACE is looking to you as RTEs and SPCs and change agents to understand what's working well, because, we can tell you what SAFE says, but what works in your enterprise as RTEs and SPCs, you're the ones seeing that. And Matt, you came off mute. Anything to add there?
No, I just wanted to add into that it's so important to be outcome focused, right? So what I like to tell people is we don't make any money here by being the best agile company in the world, right? So no one cares that we have our PI plannings exactly at this time, that we do our INA exactly at this point. That doesn't make us any money. It doesn't produce outcomes for the company, right? It's all about, what value are we driving for the company from each one of these practices. And to me, the best indicator of a good LACE is, can you ask the question, why? Why are we doing this? What value are we seeing from it? What outcomes are you looking for? And if they can answer those questions and they're good answers, then you know that you guys are kind of on the right track.
Thank you, Matt. Sally, anything to add on this one? I'll move to the next question.
I think Matt and Mike pretty much covered it.
I gotta say, this is my first time having 3 guests, and I'm really enjoying it. So thank you all. We have a question here. I see many SPCs take the class, pass the exam, but they never actually worked in the delivery network. I really feel the lack of connection beyond theory. What are your experiences? Can an SPC do the job well without having played the game? So I will tell you, if you go back and watch the 2nd episode of this series, it was with a guy named Travis Moore, and it's somebody I mentored years ago. And he has this thing he says, some things are caught, some things are taught, or other way around, some things are taught, some things are caught. And for him, as someone mentoring him, he had this confidence because he became an SPC. But then when he actually went to a PI planning event, it just blew his mind. I mean, it was a completely different paradigm shift. So the reality is that we all start our journeys where we start, right? My very first Agile release train in July of 2014 in San Francisco, I had never seen PI planning before. So, and I'm successful today, right? So you're always learning. So for me, I would say that as long as you understand where you're at, if you're doing this on your own, because not everybody has the benefit of bringing in a consultant or a consulting team to help them get started. That can definitely accelerate and head off some of the stuff, but sometimes you can't do that. You do it on your own. My personal advice is find your community. Watching these webinars like this one and others that are out there, looking at the media library on the Scaled Agile Safe Studio, there's places to learn from other individuals. Those things can help. I'm someone who learns by stories. That's why I like to give stories back. But it is absolutely true that there are situations out there where somebody got their certification last week and next week they're trying to lead a transformation. Personally, I think the way to solve that is for customers to ask some harder questions. Hey, we want to hire you to help us with our transformation. Tell me about your experience. Don't tell me about your certifications. I'll pause there, and so I don't soapbox too much. But Sally, Matt, Mike, anything to add to that?
Mike, Phil, I started as RTE before I got or became an SPC, so it's very hard for me to imagine, going to the class, taking the test, becoming an SPC and not having the experience. For me, it made taking the test and going to the class all that much better because I had already kind of lived in SAFe before. So it's very hard for me to imagine, you know, becoming an SPC with no experience and how I could on my own kind of run with that. So, you know, I think Matt was SPC prior to maybe being RTE, so he may have a better answer than me.
Tag Matt, you're it. You're on mute, sir.
Of course. I spent the first 10, 15 years of my career as an engineer in engineering management. And then I did product management for a few years as well. And I have to say that experience is extremely beneficial. So the team see me as a person who understands their perspective. Product management, maybe not so much, I've spent as much time there, but it's really helped me to put myself in their shoes, to see where they're coming from and what their needs and desires and wants are. So I wouldn't say it's required. I would say it's very helpful.
It's funny because I've had this conversation about 5 times in the last 2 weeks for some reason. And I guess my comments would be, there is no perfect RTE, there is no perfect SPC. We all bring a different skill set and experience to the table. And I've seen SPCs, Sally's aware of one that has no technical experience, but is extremely successful in implementing transformation in an organization. At the same time, just like Matt said, sometimes it makes it easier when you're having conversations with teams to understand what their challenges are. That's, you know, that helps me out a bit. But I think for me, the biggest things are mindset. Like, do you really have a growth mindset? Are you really a lifetime learner? Are you really the kind of person who is a servant leader in your heart? That is a big requirement as an RTE, because a lot of times it's team first, right? You're not doing it for you. You're not doing it for certain individuals. You're doing it for the benefit of the art. And to me, if you've got those things in mind, then I think you're in a good place.
And on that note, right, it is that mindset, right? So, you know, there's a difference between somebody who, like, I'll tell you, when I interview somebody for a consulting role, I ask them, how many transformations have you led? Right. And if I hear 7, 8, 9, it's a red flag for me, because, you know, right. You know, I think as Sally said, we're helping Arkansas Blue Cross Blue Shield, but it's their transformation, not ours. Right. Angie Smith and Sally and others at Arkansas are leading their own transformation. And so just understand that part of the role of the SPC is joining someone on their journey. And you've got life experiences, right? Whether you've been a chief of staff for a C-suite officer, or you've been a product manager or a technical person, right? Those life experiences really help you as you go. I'm going to go on to the next question here. Let's see here. And yeah, by the way, I will share the webinar series link. There's a playlist on YouTube now, so I'll get that out in just a few minutes. So one of the most difficult things for Agilists to do is show the true value to their leadership of what they bring. It's easy for a developer to show what value they represent. What's your recommendation to have your value as an RTE, the organization, recognized?
I think Matt already answered this one, didn't you, Matt?
Of the how to show your value and success?
Yeah, you were talking about outcome focused.
Yes, that's what it is. It's so, you know, obviously correlation is not causation, but you know, if you can start showing a trend of, you know, we're delivering more value, you know, not just points, but we're actually delivering more business value to our customers. Our QA backlog has decreased. You know, any number of things that you can show that will give you some metrics that show the impact that you're having. But you also have to remember, at the end of the day, it's a shared impact, right? You're saying things, you're helping coach, but they're the ones actually doing it. And I think the best feedback for me is when I hear from, you know, my boss or someone else that says, our engineers feel really protected because of you. Our business managers are coming to me and saying, I'm getting what I want. I understand the process now. And those are the types of feedbacks to me that I'm like, that's my value. There it is. Rather than the metrics. The metrics are good, but I really like that feedback from the people inside the train.
You know, I'll throw a thought here. Explaining the role of the RTE and why you need it can be tough. And you've actually kind of stumped me there, because I don't have a great answer for this. All I can tell you is that when you have a great RTE, you know it and you appreciate it. It's one of those things where it seems amorphous at first, but when that person goes on vacation or takes a day off, the whole train feels it. And you've given me a good food for thought on how do you actually quantify the value of an RTE, and I'll noodle on that one. We do have another question here. In the context of an RTE, can you please share some insight on measuring success and celebrating success? We've talked a little bit about some of the metrics there. I know, Sally, you talked about flow, and I know that your company is looking at how do you measure flow, and Matt, you mentioned outcomes. What are some of those things when it comes to success, and how do you celebrate it?
So I think what comes to mind for me is those metrics, and we usually review those kind of as an art and with our business owners in our inspect and adapt. So, proving that we are predictable, that we are delivering what we agreed upon and what we talked about in our PI planning. That's a big metric for me and for our art, is making sure that we are predictable and that we're able to deliver what we committed to. But also that we're consistent. Matt mentioned that backlog is decreasing. We're getting work out. But really, we celebrate success in that INA, and then also the team level in every review and retrospective, just looking back at all the hard work that we completed. But for the RTE, my success is really the art's success. So seeing them meet their goals and objectives means that I'm happy and that I feel successful. So it's not really about my individual success. It's more about the art.
I'm gonna pull that thread a little bit with metrics real quick. We have a question here: best measures that the business owners like. So, what are those metrics that you find that the business owners really like to look at?
Go ahead, Matt.
I'll be short and sweet. It's the ones their performance reviews are based on. So it's did I increase CSAT by 5 points this quarter, right? Those are the ones that, they don't care that you produce 1,200 points in a quarter. They only care that you produce the thing that raised my business metric to where I got a bonus this year, right? That's the thing that they want to see.
The outcomes they're measured on, right? And share those with the. Do you share those with the art, right? I mean, letting the art know, hey, here's some of the KPIs or the objectives and key results that we're being measured at as an agile release train. And oftentimes those are the same ones you'll see on the business side. Sally, Mike, anything to add?
I'd say if your business owners are engaged and they're prioritizing your work appropriately, then that should be reflected in your PI objectives. And when you see that percentage of high PI objectives being completed, then that's what your business owners want to see. So as long as they're engaged and helping with that prioritization, and these teams are, setting their PI objectives appropriately, then that's probably what the business owners want to see, is
Predictability.
those metrics.
Yeah, and just quickly to add on to that, kind of extending what Matt was saying, talk to your business owner and find out from them what matters to you. Like what do you really see as the challenges, and what are those things, and a lot of times I like to use one-on-one conversations for this, because they may not be quite as open in a bigger forum. But what matters to you? How can we make those things better? And trying to understand how you could get them feedback on that and measure progress towards it would be golden.
We only got a couple minutes left. We've got lots of questions. I'll tell you this: if we don't answer your question live, I will get that out there and we'll post it on the website with some answers. But really quickly, some of these questions are kind of this theme around kind of the RTE and different roles. So one of them is RTE versus program manager. So if your art has a program manager, you still have that traditional PMO. How do you align that role between RTE and program manager? Have you had that where you've got a program manager? Sometimes organizations will sadly, in my opinion. Sometimes a CTO will say, gosh, we need to get a handle on delivery. So we're going to put an organization in between the business and our delivery, and everything goes through them because they'll give us status. How does the RTE work with that? I see Matt laughing. I think that may have just happened to you over the last 6 months or a year.
Oh, absolutely. I think the question needs to be asked, what are you not getting? Right? What was the impetus for you to put this organization here and staff it up? You're going to spend a whole bunch of money. You're going to ramp a whole bunch of people up. What is it that you're not getting that we can provide for you that is causing this to happen? And getting the answer to that, I think, is the most important thing. In terms of the difference between the program manager and the RTE doesn't have an agenda. Program manager does, right? The only agenda the RTE person has is to have a great PI planning, make sure it's an achievable plan, make sure you know what the outcomes are to facilitate the event. But you're not going in saying we have to get feature A done by the end of this quarter or PI. And a program manager is more along those lines, right? They have a vested interest, whereas you're more agnostic as a RTE.
You may have to, if you have them, you got to form a partnership with them. What about when you're filling this role of RTE, have you considered teaching as well? So you're an SPC and an RTE. Do you teach classes? Have you taught classes?
I'm teaching my first class. I think it's next week. In the next 2 weeks, I'll be teaching my first class. So yes, I think, as SPC and RTE, I'm helping scale safe across the organization. And so I'm also helping to teach others.
Yeah, and as an RTE who teaches, you're going to learn something new in those classes. So are you teaching by yourself? You're going to pair up with somebody who's taught before? What's your...
I'm pairing up with another SPC that has taught before. So yeah.
Awesome. All right, a couple other ones here. So in my company, we have a dedicated RT and a dedicated SPC. How do the SPC and RT work together day to day? We have one Art's 100 plus people. Our SPC is also the agile coach of our development department. That's an interesting situation when you've got, well, I'm the SPC and the coach, and you're just the RTE, right? I don't know if that's what they were trying to say, but I've seen that play out before. I've heard Matt refer to himself as a coach. I've heard Mike in past conversations refer to himself as a coach. At your company, Sally, you don't have dedicated SPCs that just are SPCs. Any thoughts on how you might work if you had that situation where there's somebody who, my role is SPC, your role is RTE. How do we work together? What are your thoughts on that?
I can't say I've seen that before, Phil. So in the place I've worked, SPC was not a job. It's everyone, everyone has a job, and then you are SPC as incidentally rather than that. So I don't have a ton of insight on that, but I would say that, once again, partnership is the best way to move forward there. It's what are the things that are going to make you successful? What are you being judged on? How do we get together to make sure that we're doing the things that are the best for the team? And how do, our the expectations that have been set for us best align with them?
So we're at our time box. We've got 5 questions that are left in chat. I will take responsibility to work with our panel here to get the answers to those. I will tell you that we have an upcoming episode. I don't have a date for it yet, but I'm an SPC and a project manager. And so I think some of this whole idea of program project management, I think that might be an interesting episode. I've got 2 people in mind. One's a program manager, one's a project manager that are also SPCs, and they have the program or project management's their day job. So we'll talk about that in the future. Just want to say thank you very much, everybody. Next time around, we've got a couple guests in the June episode. I'm an SPC and a mentor with Dr. Steve Maynor and Joe Vallone. Joe leads the Safe Experts program for Scaled Agile, and Dr. Steve Maynard's a methodologist and part of the framework team. After that, we've got, I'm an SPC and a veteran. This idea of leveraging your experience serving our country to start a new career as a change agent in SPC. So thank you much, everybody, and we'll see you next time.